Attorneys for a death row inmate say their client should get a new trial.
It's not an unusual request. In fact, appeals are automatic in the case of the death penalty. So why does this one stand out? Brian Mastery is live in the newsroom with the latest. Brian.
Lauren, the inmate is a serial killer, and if you've been around Omaha in the last decade, you know the name, Anthony Garcia. He's the former doctor who got kicked out of the Creighton University pathology program and then sought revenge, killing 4 people in a 5-year span. But remember, during the court appearances, he didn't talk. He barely moved during his trial, and here in 2018, during his 3-day hearing to see if he would get the death penalty, it often looked like he was asleep or unconscious. In fact, his Chicago attorneys said he had quit communicating with them. His new attorneys raised all sorts of questions about the old attorneys, and in November gave the Nebraska Supreme Court 130 reasons why his death penalty case should get another look. Now, while the Nebraska Supreme Court is still reviewing that appeal from November, I came across this motion in district court filed about the same time. It explains that Garcia was getting oral antidepressants and mood stabilizer meds. Oral is the key part of that. I'll tell you why in a moment. But attorneys are questioning whether his body was absorbing it correctly because he had had gastric bypass surgery. Garcia was convicted of killing 4 people in 2008 at this Dundee home. 11-year-old Thomas Hunter and the family's housekeeper, Shirley Sherman, were stabbed to death. Thomas's father had kicked Anthony Garcia out of Creighton. Then 5 years later, in 2013, Roger and Mary Brumbeck were murdered in their West Omaha home. Roger was also a Creighton pathology doctor. Garcia was deemed competent to stand trial several times. His newer attorneys handling the appeals, the Nebraska Commission on Public Advocacy, say that in 2019 they got a report from Nebraska Corrections and saying that after Garcia got psychiatric meds injected into his body, not oral meds, this was involuntary, by the way, he was now able to shower, eat, interact with staff, not sleep all day, things he had previously not been doing. Bottom line here, John and Lauren, his attorneys who have called the defense put on by the Chicago attorneys a nightmare, believe there's ample evidence Anthony Garcia, who is 49 now, should get a new trial. The case is currently under review by the Nebraska Supreme Court. We're live in the newsroom. Brian Mastery, 6 News.